morning. We are really excited to have President John Cox with us today and Dean Don Crampton from Cape Cod Community College. They're here today to provide us with an update and a bit of a history and progress report on the new Frank and Maureen Wilkins Science and Engineering Center. So we're really excited to hear about that. I think there's a lot of synergies to be talked about between our organization and the great work that you do over there at the community college. As most of the people probably realize, I worked over at Four Cs for 4 years, and I was lucky enough to be there when John Cox came in 2012 as the president of the institution. And so I'm so glad to be able to have you here in this venue. And so with that, I will turn it over to the both of you to
Okay, Jennifer, thank you, and Bert, thank you. And I want to thank the council for having Don and I here this morning to really share where Cape Cod is with what will become the largest investment in public higher education in a generation. And I'm really, well, let's see here. There we go. I just had my, all right, PowerPoint popped up and sort of took out some of my notes here. I'm grateful to be here with Don Crampton, our Dean of STEM, who's been facilitating the college's work in the design with our architects and with DCAM. That's the Commonwealth's Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. And I also want to recognize Bridget Berger out there in the Zoom room and her leadership with our STEM network. So before we get into the details, let me just spend a quick moment on what we call Hope Achieved and what the new Frank and Maureen Wilkins Science and Engineering Center will entail. As we look back, there are really many people that have been tied up in moving this initiative forward over the years. And the preliminary details date back about 14 years, where the basis for our authorization in the 2008 Massachusetts Higher Education Bond Bill actually occurred. And we did get out of the starting gate, so to speak, with a $42 million project back in 2014 that I'm sure many of you recall. And then as you're thinking about more recent history, in 2015, we had those intense snow events. And you'll remember the T had more problems than usual. And then the new governor decided to do a reset on statewide capital investment. And our project ultimately ended up stopping. The bond bill that we were funded through sunset. And we did have the foundation for our Science and Engineering Center design, but there was really no path forward at that particular moment. After some resets and the opportunity for the college to be represented in the development of the strategic framework for the competitively choosing of what statewide public higher education would fund in terms of capital projects, and being the only institution at the table with the Commonwealth's Administration and Finance Division, the Executive Office of Education, and DCAM, we had a solid understanding going forward on really what needed to be done to move this project back to life. So with the help of Representative Vieira and his leadership role on the House Committee on Bonding, Capital Expenditures, and State Assets, and our entire delegation, we were at the table advocating in both the House and the Senate as the 2018 bond bill moved forward. And we were included in that bond bill as well with a line. Fast forward a year beyond the passage of the bond bill which authorizes the ability to appropriate the funds. We were one of only 6 from the 28 capital project proposals that was actually funded. And with $25 million in the governor's capital investment plan dedicated to our project, our $42 million center in 2015 was revisited and value engineered to a $38 million project in 2019 dollars. And with the state's investment and with the college's reserve that we had set aside to the tune of $3 million, the project requires $10 million of local and community investment. Hence, we have our capital campaign that's going on. And we're about 75% of the way to achieving that goal. And you know, fortunately, a pandemic can't even stop us from moving ahead with this. So as Don gets ready to take over, you're going to see through the Frank and Maureen Wilkins Science and Engineering Center, you're going to see a teaching and learning center that's really acknowledging the aspects of modularity to adapt to changing technologies and modes of learning over time. And you'll see how we're working to be an example and a proving ground, if you will, of energy efficiency, sustainability, and adapting new technologies to ancient challenges. So, Don, hot potato, over to you.
Thank you, John, and thank you to everyone for inviting us to talk about our new science building. A lot of work has been going on over the last 2 years. I think my third or fourth day on the job was a meeting about the new science building just a couple of years ago. So what I have is some artist renderings of what the building's going to look like. So let's go through those as I talk. So this is the south approach. If you were coming up from campus, this would be coming through what we call the main entrance. The building is right in the middle of campus. And so then purposely designed that way. So on campus, really we're missing a sort of a central shared space. And so this is one of the functions of the building. The building is a pavilion. It's got 4 front doors so that it really can talk to all aspects of the campus and provide that space that we are missing. Here's the north approach. And so this would be looking kind of from the parking lots all the way on the backside of campus. And where there's that green space that you see, that's where the new old science building sits right now. So this really creates a whole new green space on campus and really a whole secondary entrance to the campus. And so providing another aspect of the campus that we don't have right now. So what is it that we want the new building to do? We really want a building that encourages persistence and completion for STEM students. And so what we're looking at here is one of the hallways, and one of the aspects of the building are spaces for students to hang out and to study and to interact with faculty. And so you can see this space looks a little bit like a space you might find at a tech company or a science company, right? These idea of shared workspaces where people can study and work on problems and interact with each other, both students and faculty. We are interested in having a building that supports a culture of curiosity, learning, and success in STEM. And so particularly downstairs, but all throughout the building, we have what you might call as science on display, that anyone who's entering the building can see the science that's going on. And right here in the center of our picture is a makerspace. It seems a pretty boring makerspace because there's nothing in there in the drawing. But it's a makerspace. We don't have a makerspace on campus right now, and most people are probably familiar with the idea of a makerspace these days. That is this collaborative, hands-on space for students to work on projects both independently and with potentially with the courses that they're in. And so this space is designed to have 3D printers, computer-aided design, computers to design those things. They'll be made by the 3D printers, other things like vinyl cutters, even to the point perhaps sewing machines and sticker machines, so that students can create things and courses can go in here. And this is a space that we really don't have on campus right now, a space where students can just go and create and innovate. The building is meant to really to attract industry collaboration in STEM education. Again, here we are on the same bottom floor with a makerspace sort of just down the hall is the engineering laboratory. Anyone who knows where the engineering laboratory is now, it's in the gym. And it's kind of hidden. And if you didn't know where it was, you wouldn't be able to find it. And so here, the engineering lab is really put pretty much in the most prominent, one of the most prominent places on campus. This is coming into the building just from Grossman Commons, where our food facilities are. And so almost every student would be able to be walking by this almost daily. And so this is engineering on display. This is showing what's going on. And you can't quite see you can't see it because it's behind the makerspace. But this is also going to have a prototyping space. Inside that prototyping space, we're going to have much more high-end 3D printers and computers for CAD, so that we can continue as we do now and perhaps expand, bringing businesses and industries to campus to work with our students. And particularly right now, we work with on-site computing. Students often are using those two computers or two robots that you see in the picture to help with projects or to emulate projects at on-site computing, where the robots themselves are making the chips, etc. As John mentioned previously, we really are looking for a building that provides flexibility for future workforce needs. Up on the first floor, we have 6 laboratories. We have an environmental science laboratory, a chemistry laboratory, 2 anatomy and physiology laboratories, and 2 molecular biology laboratories. But most, except for the chemistry laboratory, because we're really bound by the types of equipment that need to be on the table, most of the labs will look like this. And so the tables are movable. The labs themselves are modular in the sense that multiple disciplines can be taught in that laboratory. And so in the future, if we need laboratories to function as different things to cover different disciplines or newer courses, the laboratories will give us that flexibility. We're also looking for a building that facilitates community partnership in STEM education. And so you're looking at the north-facing part of the building, and there's this very large community space, and one of the lecture halls you can see, and there's another lecture hall kind of behind us. And so this is looking down at the first floor. That's also where the physics learning lab is, the makerspace, and the engineering lab. And so that provides this rare, unique space that we also don't have on campus presently, that we can invite people from the community in. So K through 12 community events that we can gather in that space, and potentially students can then go into the makerspace, students can go into the physics active learning space, they can go in or even view the engineering lab. And so this provides this space that we can use, particularly with the STEM network and Bridget Berger, to bring people in and experience the science building. You can see here that it's for presentations and such, we can really expand in that what you're looking at is the lecture hall, and then the lecture hall opens up out into this space, and then there's a projection, or there'll be a screen above that lecture hall so that you can see what's going on in the lecture hall. And so this is this event, learning, community space that we don't presently have on campus. And we really were looking for a building that promotes sustainability and conservation, as John had mentioned earlier. This again is a picture of um, the, uh, the the northern side of the building, just down below, and you can see, I think, the physics over there on the left, the makerspace in the middle, and the engineering space down on the right behind the stairwell. So what are the sustainability and conservation parts of the building? So the building really lends itself to having a rooftop solar voltaic system, because it's a pavilion. It's completely, the roof is completely flat. And so the building has been designed to have essentially complete coverage of the roof with this solar voltaic system. And what that contributes to is contributes to the other parts of the building, and the building itself is going to be LEED Gold certification. At least we're on pace, or we're on pace for the building to be such. The building also has, its component, or the components of the building materials are all mostly not only being selected for ability to last a long time and its strength and its beauty in a sense. Many of those building materials we're choosing are very low net carbon, and so in the process of building those. So I'm not going to be able to remember the type of substance that's going out on the outside, but there was a choice between something that produced a lot more carbon in its construction and another. And, those are the kinds of choices that we've been making. So, this idea of being net carbon zero, not only in the energy of the building, but what are you doing? What kinds of things are you using to build the building? How well that fits into our idea of conservation. So this building is going to be exceptionally efficient and exceptionally sustainable. The building, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, the building is set up to be 100% electrical, so that in the future, if not immediately so, it's meant to be net zero, that we're not using any sort of, the building can be powered in the future by any sort of renewable energy source. And so we're not using any fossil fuels in the building directly. As everyone is likely aware, the Cape Cod has wastewater challenges. Just in the last few weeks, there's been a number of articles about the toxic cyanobacteria blooms that we have in our ponds that are related to the nitrogen in the environment. I think there's been perhaps a talk about what we need to do with our wastewater, and that we can't build any more houses until we understand how to treat our wastewater. And so the building we have something that we think really addresses this issue, and we're working incredibly hard with state and local plumbing and building codes in order to put it in the building. So what we are putting in the building is this closed loop toilet. It's a really later version, much more progressed version of the Caltech toilet that won the Toilet of the Future contest of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I think in 2014. And so we're working quite closely with that Caltech research lab and their company that has created the commercial version of this toilet called EcoSan, which is in China. And we're putting it into the building. It will be usable. It's not, I think the level is 15 flushes per day, but it's really for display, advertising the new technology, and potentially for research. There are opportunities for our students to interact and research with the toilet, particularly perhaps in collaboration with Caltech. Caltech is very interested in training students how to repair such a mechanism. I'm not a plumber. If anyone is out there understands plumbing and wastewater, the toilet itself is really a miniaturized waste treatment plant. And so all sort of just in a single room. And so the water itself is constantly recycled. And so you just keep using the same water over and over again. The water gets treated, and once a year or so, you take out the solids that have accumulated. And no water is going out into the environment. And so it's hard to show where it would be in the building, but if you look here on the left-hand photo, you can see there's the actual toilet component, which is, I think, is labeled number 1, but there's the entire wastewater treatment facility. And that's what we are going to put on display in the building, is all the ins and outs and the plumbing. You can imagine signs and explanations of what's exactly going on. And over here on the right is an example of what it might look like. That as you come into the building, particularly on the first floor, you'll have this toilet of the future there on your left-hand side, and the waste hot water treatment facility and what's going on will be labeled and explained to anyone who's entering the building. As John said, we're well on our way to achieving our full funding. There's additional funds to be raised is only 2.7 million. So at the moment, we're 93% of the way towards our goal. And there are plenty of naming opportunities, although I do notice that the toilet of the future is already reserved if everyone was going to fight over that one. So, there are opportunities to name areas of the building. We have $2.7 million left. We're 93% of the way there. And so I think, we're well on our way to achieving our dream. And we are breaking ground. We broke ground in fall 2020, just a few months ago. If anyone who's been on the college campus recently, those lecture halls are completely gone. That was, I think, for a lot of faculty, particularly because of the pandemic, the construction kind of happened, without any observant. And I think one of our college meetings, John showed the lecture halls being gone, and it was a pretty shocking moment, I think, for everyone to see that the building of the construction of the building is progressing. And we are at the moment on pace to open the brand new building in spring 2023. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. This is a wonderful presentation. I'd like to open it up now to the audience for folks that have questions. I can start with one question or, kind of comment I want to ask President Cox. President Cox, can you talk about the significance of the $5 million donation from Maureen and Frank Wilkins, and just, what that means for the campus here in West Barnstable, but also just the significance in higher education in general?
It is truly a transformational gift. It really helped propel this whole project along. That the capital campaign was clearly achievable, and it became the rocket fuel to drive this effort. And it's been the Wilkins and the Mr. Wilkins of late, and then Mrs. Wilkins continuing on, have really been all out for the college over the years. Tremendous supporters of what we do. all starting from a an altruistic experience with one of our students and just making the commitment. It actually drew a lot of national attention because when you're a community college, people, number one, don't think community colleges are in fundraising. So it's sort of a novel thought. But it goes back to the notion that, people, you can give $5 million to Harvard, you can give $5 million to your local community college. The ultimate outcome of those dollars, much more transformational when you're right there in the community, when you're touching the lives of people who are being educated in the community. And pretty much the majority of our graduates will continue to stay in our community. They'll be the workers, they'll be the families, they'll be the support moving forward. So it's the giving to the community college has a multiplier effect. And this investment becomes the basis for so many of the people that we depend on in our community, from the nurses graduating and working in healthcare, to the folks working in the labs and in the manufacturers on the Cape, to the office, the culinary, the hospitality people. So most of the students coming through the college at some point are going to interface with what's going on in this center. So it's truly transformational. The Wilkins have been phenomenal at really driving Cape Cod Community College forward in ways that many of our other community colleges out there haven't been able to do because of this generosity. So it's really, we're very appreciative, and it's a motivator for a lot of people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We have a question in the chat from Robin, who's on our board from Cape Space. She's wondering about, do you see that this new science and engineering center will have an impact on enrollment and maybe programming, things like that?
Don, I lost you. There you are. You want to?
Yeah, I know that we're often, we don't want to rely on the new science building to bump up enrollment, but on the other hand, I do know that no one has opened a new science building without a bump up in enrollment. So I do think the building itself provides a focus for excitement, that it'll be a world-class facility. It is going to look impressive when people visit the campus. It'll be on par, if not better, than the facilities that the students are coming from on the Cape, which is not the reality now. I think some students, particularly STEM students who will come to our campus, they're going to get amazing instruction and incredibly dedicated professors, but at the moment they're going to get a lab from the 1960s. So, I think that will be an important part of attracting students to campus. Will it allow us to create new programs? Well, I definitely think that, one wants their science and STEM programs to evolve as the community evolves. And I think I talked with Bert about a new program we were trying to build called the Blue Economy. And, I think the building only gives us more flexibility to create those programs that, that the Cape and the local area need based on our workforce needs.
Yeah, several folks, here in this meeting today are heavily involved in the efforts regarding the blue economy here on the Cape. Steve Tom asked in the chat, oops, it's going away, is there a plan to intentionally connect the science curriculum to the Cape Cod economy and blue economy businesses and related jobs? I suspect likely that is already happening, but can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I think, we do have, we have transfer science programs, biology, physics, chemistry, etc. We also support our internal, health sciences. So, nursing is an incredibly popular and important major on our campus. All those nurses take our science courses. And we have those programs which are more workforce related, environmental science, engineering. And so we already work with lots of businesses on the Cape. And I will say that at the moment, we are working very hard to get a blue economy degree, which we will work directly with those blue economy programs, which would be a program that is essentially kind of brand new when the building as well opens at the same time. And so, yes, so as I said, intentionally connect the science curriculum. We at a community college, we do this all the time, particularly those programs which are more workforce related. Those programs have advisory boards, and so local businesses sit on those advisory boards, and they help us build the curriculum and tell us what should be in our courses so that our students are prepared to go into their to be their future employees.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have another question here in the chat from another question from Robin that I think is pretty timely. She said, can you share your thoughts on the STEM movement versus the growing science denier sentiment in the country?
Share my thoughts?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, all right. I think it's incredibly odd to be anti-intellectual, anti-science. Science. I think, if anything, science literacy becomes more important every day. Our lives are changed by robots, artificial intelligence, and just the skills that science teaches you. Science teaches you essentially to say why, right? Carl Sagan said science is more than a body of knowledge, it's a way of thinking. And he said that if you don't know science, how do you know when someone's lying to you? Because how can you investigate that? So I think that's incredibly important in this, particularly this political climate, the idea of research and looking at data and what does the data and analyzing that data and either proving or disproving your hypothesis, that essentially has to be a way of life because of the way we have to comb through all types of information that we're being flooded with from the internet. To think scientifically, I think is incredibly helpful in that sense. So obviously I'm a big fan of science. So I think, science, one of the important parts about this science building is that all students will go through it, right? At the community college, all students to get a degree are required to take 2 science classes and a math class. And so math classes, the 2 science classes, they have to take 1 class with a lab and 1 class, or they have to take at least 1 class with a lab. And so all of the, 3,000 some students that we have will take science courses in this new building. And science on display, a brand new building, rooms that are meant, right now our science building kind of fights against us in a sense if we want to do the education that we want to do, hands-on active learning in the classroom. And this building is meant to facilitate that instead of sort of fight against us. And so I think not only will science look better, I think science will be able to be taught better. And so I think our students will be much more interested in what's going on in the classroom.
Thank you. Another question and comment from the chat from Jane B. Ward. Congratulations on this remarkable new STEM center. I applaud your high sustainability rating and community interaction. She is particularly interested in the healthy buildings in addition to green buildings. It is wonderful to know about, she'd like to know about the functioning windows and about the toilet of the future. Can you comment on the aspect of indoor air quality and on-site management more of the plumbing output?
I see with the president, I could throw that one to the president.
The air quality, you know, I'm an accountant by training, but I'll take a stab at it. The windows in the office area, primarily external, they are operable. They can be opened, and part of that was to, you know, enable people to have the fresh ventilation. We've done the math on the turnover of the air based on the ceiling configuration that we have, where we don't have the suspended tile ceiling. It's sort of an open top. And I know some of the concern of late has been the refresh rate given COVID-19, and we're within the realm of what the CDC guidance has been in that refresh. And if people have specific questions about that, I can get you the official technical jargon to explain it, but we seem to be pretty well on that front. On the Toilet of the Future initiative, in 2014, I had two opportunities. One, I did a short-term Fulbright to India, and then 6 months later, I got called by the State Department under the Obama administration to work on the U.S.-India higher education dialogue, when at the time India was looking at building out a lot of community colleges. In the process of being there, it was really clear that one of the fundamental issues across the country is wastewater, and in particular how it affects women and children in school, that when you don't have facilities, people tend to drop out of education. I had some interface with the folks from the Gates Foundation, actually spoke at length with them, learned quite a bit about the Reinvent the Toilet initiative. Actually, on one of my summer vacations, I stopped in to see and meet the folks who won the Reinvent the Toilet initiative at Caltech, and, you know, sort of touching and feeling what the facilities is. And basically they were building out shipping containers that could go around the world and be, you know, these little wastewater treatment plants that are available to people. But all along, the push by the Gates Foundation is, okay, we have the technology, it's out there, it's growing, but the unit costs are still way too high. And we really need to take the technology and push it out to commercial realm where it's much more in use, it's much more accepted, and the costs are pushed down further. And the costs have declined with what we see with where we are with EcoSan. But our hope, we would become the first location in North America to actually have this facility in a public operation. And the hope is that we're moving the technology forward as another option, rather than you know, having an outhouse, having an incinerator toilet, or having to build out multi-billion-dollar infrastructures to, you know, flow wastewater to a treatment plant. Maybe there's another option here that we can work with and promote, and we'll be in on the front end of it. And, you know, Cape Cod becomes a lab. So it's been a lot of dialogue over the years, but the one thing that we have learned at Cape Cod Community College, whether we're doing aviation programs, whether we're doing science buildings or toilets of the future, that sometimes you have to be patient and you just need to stick with it, and then you can achieve the goal. That's where we are.
Thank you, John. Interesting question here about the curriculum direction and matriculation options. So Jeff wrote, there's a very positive tension between the STEM branded development effort, and how would you relate that from the perspective a more traditional community college path versus pure workforce development pathway?
Excellent question. Do we have, how many hours do we have? So the college, the STEM programs have many individual articulation agreements. So for example, our engineering program has articulation agreements with the engineering programs at UMass Dartmouth and UMass Lowell, because sometimes it's just easier that way, and that there's a lot of specific requirements for four-year schools, particularly in the technical or engineering fields. Of course, there is the mass transfer pathway itself, which really sort of tells exactly what students need to take so that they can transfer to four-year schools. That's all online. You type in the degree that you want, and where community college you're at and what school you want to go to, and it'll tell you exactly what courses you need to take. And so that's obviously extremely popular. And I agree that on a community college campus, you have sometimes those two populations: those that are transferring on and want to get a bachelor's degree, and those that are perhaps more workforce related. One thing I can say is I think the college itself, and in STEM particularly, we're working on trying to make those associate's degrees a lot more valuable. You know, by definition, an associate's degree seems to be halfway. So what if you don't want to go on and get a bachelor's degree? You know, what does it mean to be halfway? Well, perhaps you can make that associate's degree a lot more valuable. So we are thinking about professional skills, digital badges, and um, uh, getting out, working with the community, having internships, those sort of thing, getting real life experience so that our students are ready to go into jobs directly after graduating from Cape Cod, and having a secondary sort of off ramp instead of everyone needing to go on and get a bachelor's degree.
Thank you. Bert, I can no longer see the chat because I had to pop off for a second, but so can you help me?
Sure. Well, I just had a question. Can you tell us about the architectural firm that's working on the building?
Their name is Payette. I believe they must be out of Boston. I've been blown away. After I had a few conversations with them, I thought to myself, man, I should have been an architect. They are problem solvers. I don't know how many times along the way, they've asked us exactly, we say we need this done, and they come back and they've got this new sort of solution. If you were to visit their offices, they just have hundreds of projects of similar types, all over. So they are pretty well known, I would guess, in the field of academic buildings, particularly science buildings.
Let me just add to that. We were also able to carry them over from the first project so that we didn't lose a lot of effort when we started this back in 2014.
That's great. So Eldon had a question about how can what can happen at the secondary school level to help prepare students to be more ready to come into the community college and take advantage of the new facilities that are there. Hopefully,
yeah, that's a great question. I think our more evolving position is, what can we do to be more prepared for those students? And so, there's this idea of an institution being student ready, and the students who come out of secondary school, and that's how they come out of secondary school. Cape Cod Community College is an open access institution. So what can we do to remove as many barriers as possible at the community college level for those students to be successful? And that's, we're in the midst of revising our math curriculum. We're in the midst of doing a lot more active learning on campus. We're really trying to become much more student ready, be prepared to teach the students that come to you.
That's great. If someone's interested in teaching at Four Cs, who do they contact?
That's another really great question. When we have positions, which we often do, those are always posted. But I would not discourage emailing the dean directly and saying, this is my skill set. These are the types of things I'm interested in teaching, so that you would be you could be told ahead of time that a position is going to be posted, or if we might say, oh my God, we have exactly that need, and then I'm going to be posting this position. You should be aware.
I would add to that, as someone with 16 years experience in higher education, don't call. It's better to professionally introduce yourself via email, provide your resume, give a introduction to yourself, explain, what your, experiences are, and, that your connection to the Cape, I think, also helps. But I know, being a sort of on the front lines, a lot of people call, and it's really best to, do the work, find out who the dean is or the department chair, email them both. I know that is generally well received from folks in higher ed. Are there other questions? Bridget, do you have any comments or observations about how this will transform your work?
I am so glad you asked me that. Thank you, because this is so exciting. The role that I play at the community college is really as a connector to the community, as a connector to industry. So as John explained and showed, I think you'll see with this building how transparent it is to see what's happening. When you come to the building for any reason, you'll be engaged. Just visually, you can see what's happening. But I'm really excited to help to bring industry together, to partner with our faculty to create those kind of hands-on opportunities like we're doing with Onset and Rick Bashar as engineering students. I think there's so many opportunities to do more of that. Also, the other piece that I just want to mention is one of the things we do a lot with the STEM network is K through 12 teacher professional development. So Eldon, to get to your question, one of the ways that I think we are making a difference in the Cape and Islands community is through these institutes that we hold for teachers. So with this new building, there's real opportunity to bring teachers in, train them in a variety of methods, whether it's the teaching methods or whether it's the equipment, or whether it's forming collaborations and just making the K through 12 community stronger, I think is something that we can do with this space that we haven't had before.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Angela, thank you for your great words. We're very proud to have one of your adjunct faculty members on our board, new board member, Angela from Cape Forward. Henry has a question. Has there been much thought about developing a program aimed at bridge construction? There may be a job market in that field rather soon.
One can only hope that. I think one of the first things I did, John and I went to a meeting about constructing the new bridges. That's an interesting question. I think one of the things that we are learning and focusing on is how can many institutions work together to provide specific skills. And so this is not particularly about the bridge, but at bridge building, but at the moment we work pretty closely with Bristol and Bridgewater and ourselves to interact with the what's going on with offshore wind. And I would assume there are many skills that are associated with offshore wind that are associated with bridge building as well. And so I think, you know, building these programs that are sort of these high tech and technological skills, I think are cut across different areas. So right off the top of my head, I know for the offshore wind that the Maritime Academy has courses in working at heights. I'm assuming that's a very similar thing you might have to do when you're building a bridge, is learn how to work at heights. And so I think that's the kind of thing that would cross over.
Well, thank you so much for all of this, for the great conversation, for the Q&A, and for the presentation and sharing all those renderings with us. As someone who has worked at the institution and cares very deeply about the students and faculty and staff at that institution, I think it's going to be so transformative, and it's going to be such a great opportunity for everyone in our region to have this as a resource in so many different avenues, not just in the classroom. And we look forward to hopeful continued partnership from the Tech Council and the Community College. I mean, as you can see, actually we have Bridget on our board as well. And so there's lots of engagement. And of course, we're always open to hearing from you, Dawn, and you, President Cox, if there's any ideas you have about synergies between our two organizations.